Most of the work I am going to present today was done by my graduate student, master's graduate student, Amanda. Amanda, stand up for a minute. There you go. Yeah, there you go. The reason, it's not out of, kindness I'm asking her to stand, because the reason is, why am I here standing rather than Amanda? It's just because of a simple fact that I'm good looking. I'm much better looking than Amanda, so the committee said I should be the one who is presenting this. So better luck next time, Amanda. So I'm going to talk about symbiotic supplementation on Salmonella challenge during or after infection, post-Salmonella challenge. To introduce Salmonella is a big problem. There are a lot of reservoirs, typhoidal and non-typhoidal. Typhoidal is a different story. Non-typhoidal is where the poultry industry is really concerned. The typhoidal will cause death, and it's a big deal. But the non-typhoidal, it's a big problem in US. Back where I come from, India, it's not that we don't have Salmonella enteritis in chickens, but it's never a problem for humans. You know why? For a simple reason. We nuke the product. We nuke our chickens. We cook them. When my wife, or me cook our chicken, we cook for like 30 minutes. So poor Salmonella, it doesn't stand a chance against us. But here, we don't cook the meat. And then there's another problem. We live in a culture where we always try to blame someone. You fall down, you try to figure out whether the guy who made the stairs didn't do it properly. So we live in a culture where we always try to blame someone else. So what we do? So you get a chicken, you don't cook it properly. So what do? You always blame the chicken producers so that you can have some money or happiness that you are able to blame someone. So that's a problem. Salmonella is a big problem, especially the non-typhoidal is a big problem, because chickens, they rarely show symptoms. Like my graduate student was putting 1 to the 10 to the power of, it was an adult layer birds at 18 weeks of age. Especially at 18 weeks of age, these layer birds, we are putting huge amount of Salmonella, 1 to the 10 to the power of 9 CFU per bird, and the birds are not even showing any symptoms of Salmonella. Lot of time, the poultry producer is not even aware that his flock is having Salmonella. In fact, most likely, most of the farms are going to have Salmonella to start with. The other thing is, we really cannot use, and we do not want to use, antibiotics to get rid of Salmonella. It's never going to happen, because no matter what, even if those antibiotics are never going to be used in human medicine, still using an antibiotic to get rid of Salmonella is not going to happen, because somehow they are going to argue that these Salmonella are going to resist or going to become resistant to the antibiotics you are going to use, even if you are not going to use the same antibiotics to the human industry. So it's a big problem. What happens is, a lot of time the bird takes the Salmonella organism through the feed or from the litter. It's pretty common that we don't change litter between, especially with broiler production. If you're talking about broiler production, it is pretty common that in the industry we don't change the litter for 2 years. All we do is top up the previous litter material, bring in the new birds, we keep moving. So once the birds take the Salmonella in the gut, what happens is either go to the, the feces, which can contaminate the eggs as, eggshells. Other things, some of these Salmonella, we talked a lot about how they can cross the intestinal barrier. They somehow cross the intestinal barrier, they go to the liver, they go to the ovary, and once they go to the ovary, they can get inside the egg. So basically they, like growing they can even grow the yolk. It's not only the contamination of the shell, it can also contaminate the yolk of the egg. And especially if you're not going to cook your egg properly because you're having, I don't know, bullseye or sunshine eggs, you end up having salmonella in your food. When you talk to the industry people, how do you control salmonella? There's never one-step program. For example, if you want to control smallpox, it's a one-step program. Vaccine. Have a good vaccine, you vaccinate your population, smallpox is not going to be that. You can eradicate smallpox. But when it comes to salmonella, it's never a one-step process. Because even with this million steps you have, still you get a problem because the basically chickens do not clear salmonella. So if you are going to look at, like I got it from a field veterinarian, and they say that we do these different steps. You want to clean out your modules. You want to use acidifiers. There are more than one acidifier in the water. Like there are acidifiers in the that you can add to the feed. You can use probiotics. Probiotics used in the water, in the growth bonds, right after hatch. One of the biggest problem when it comes to salmonella is birds which get hatched. They don't get to eat, like Mike Lilburn talks a lot about it, like get hatched in the hatchery, you don't pull out the bird for a while, maybe after 12 hours you pull out your birds, they don't get to eat anything, and then they go to the farm, they are on the litter material. What do? The first thing they do is start to pick the litter material, which probably had salmonella from the previous batch, and as I said, we do not change the litter material for up to 2 years. So the first thing it's going to take is the salmonella. Day 0, what happens with salmonella is, even with the bird, the day 0 as the salmonella colonizes the intestine, the birds are not even going to put an immune response because at even day 0, the immune system of the birds are not even well developed. So the bird is going to make an assumption that salmonella is a normal bacteria, normal pathogen, like a part of your gut microbes. So it's not going to put an immune response. So eventually you're going to have a problem because of that. So what people do is they use probiotic use in the water growth, and then they have this probiotic gel even in the chick box after they hatch. Once they hatch, they get the probiotics in the gut, in the gel material, so that it can be taken up. And in these probiotics, which I'll talk about it in a minute, they get a chance to colonize the intestine before the salmonella gets a chance to colonize the intestine. Probiotic in feed, and then acidifying litter of grow-out bonds. What they try to do is even if you can't afford to remove your litter at the end of each broiler trial, what they try to do is collect the litter material, because you're going to have 1 week downtime before you get your new batch. So what they try to do is collect the litter material, just put it in a pile so that the fermentation will start to kill the salmonella. Complete clean out. Good luck with that. The industry is never going to do a complete clean out. It's going to be pretty pricey. Growth promoter, propionic acid, these acidifiers, and antibiotics in feed. Vaccination. There are a lot of live vaccines available for broiler birds. Live vaccines have their own problems, in the sense the biggest problem is monitoring. How does your live vaccine going to affect the monitoring program for salmonella by the FDA? And then with the live vaccine, what is the probability that the live vaccine is going to mutate? So what about killed vaccine? In fact, there are a couple of killed vaccines available for salmonella, but for layers. There's no way you are going to have 1 million broiler birds being vaccinated with, you cannot hold each broiler bird and then inject them, because killed vaccine have to be injected. So as far as I know, there are no killed vaccines available for the broilers. There are some killed vaccine available for layer birds. With broiler birds, you have a live vaccine available, but keep in mind, that's always a probability of the live vaccine getting mutated back into the wild type. And then there is this big problem. Here is a vaccine that doesn't work, like at the maximum, like even published reports with this vaccines, they say that at the maximum they can reduce the amount of Salmonella colonization in your gut. It's never going to eliminate, but after a while even the amount of immune response, antibodies against Salmonella goes down in the chicken. So talking about my talk, so here is the problem with Salmonella. So what can you do? As you said, as I was saying in the previous, one of the things a lot of people try to do is using probiotics. I'm going to use symbiotics. Symbiotics, probably most of you would know, are a combination. They are a combination between probiotics and prebiotics. Probiotics, what's a probiotics? Probiotics, every company has them, or more than, each company have more than one probiotics. There are companies which have which will customize they will come to your farm, they will customize your probiotics based on your farm. So there are a lot of companies, each companies have more than one lines. What's the definition is mostly they are live microbial feed supplement, but in reality they are spores, they are not live microbes. For example, if you are going to have that was for a simple reason, like one is you can transport them pretty easily, you don't have to refrigerate it. If you want to use, for example, when you buy yogurt in your supermarket, you find your yogurt in the cold section, right? Because you need to refrigerate them. On the other hand, the spores you don't have to refrigerate, so which is a big deal. Other thing is the yogurt you are having, most likely it's a protein supplement, because most of the live microorganism in your yogurt is going to be killed by your gastric pH. So spores are much better, even though they are not live in the ideal term, but still we call them live because we can assume that, or we know for certain that these spores will sporulate down the intestinal tract, and they can help you by improving your intestinal microbial balance. I'm going to talk about it. Prebiotics, hold on, I'll come to that a little bit later. Probiotics are live microbial supplement which is going to beneficially influence the host by improving its intestinal balance. There are a lot of mechanisms, like people can talk for hours and hours. Today morning, Lisa Bielke, she talked about what are the other beneficial effects of bacteria other than just keeping your gut safe. They can stimulate your immune response, competitive exclusion of pathogenic microorganism. I do think that competitive exclusion is one of the major pathways through which probiotics can help, meaning just by multiplying, taking over the niche spots in your gut, the pathogenic microorganisms do not get a chance to colonize. They just take over the pot. They produce digestive enzymes, production of antimicrobial substance. In fact, there are if you Google probiotics, go to PubMed, go for probiotics, literally thousands of articles, thousands of review articles are available, which means that there are 10,000s of original articles. They talk about how probiotics can help you with even human microbiology, with lactose tolerance, because some of these probiotics can produce lactase enzyme. They can help you with serum cholesterol. They help you with strengthen your innate immunity. They are used for controlling inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome. Probiotics are used extensively for gut microorganism. For example, someone at ORDC, like Linda Safe, they suggest certain probiotics for viral infection in kids. Probiotics are used heavily for travelers digest diarrhea. They can produce short chain fatty acids, which can improve the health of your gut. In fact, as I said, there are so many publications, there are more talks. If you want to learn more probiotics, if you didn't come to Lisa Bielke talk, she'll be giving the same talk tomorrow. It's a good talk. You can find a lot of research about probiotics in the literature. When it comes to probiotics, combination of the strains is the norm. No industry manufacturer, they do not want to work with single strain and then say here is the strain, because if you have more strains you would be able to target a much wider industry people, because a combination of the strain depends, like what is the probability that your strain is going to colonize the entire gut, because there's going to be different changes in the pH as you move from one end of the gut to the other end. So the individual strain, which region of the intestine you are going to target, and what is the species of the animal, ducks, chicken, Japanese quail, turkeys. So microbial population that's being replaced. So because of this problem, what manufacturers normally do is have at least 4. I have seen probiotics products with 5 different strains of the probiotics to work with. So I'm going to move from probiotics into prebiotics. When it comes to prebiotics, it's kind of tricky because how you define a prebiotic by a prebiotic. So I'm going to briefly, not too much, just for a slide. The word prebiotics was coined by this Dr. Robert Freud in 1995. So he defined probiotics in a certain way, prebiotics in a certain way. So since he coined the word prebiotic, he thinks that he gets to determine what you call a prebiotic. So according to Dr. Robert Freud, this was the definition he came up with. If you want to define a probiotic, resistance to gastric acidity, meaning it should not be digested by you. In fact, it should be resistant to any of your mammalian enzymes, meaning it should not be digested by humans or poultry, or it should not even be absorbed. It should be fermented. Instead of being digested, it has to be fermented by intestinal microflora. Not any intestinal microflora, but selectively, like those microfloras that can increase the growth of these good bacteria, lactobacillus and bifidobacteria, is what he is thinking in his head. So once in a while he'll come back, this article, like originally published in 1995, and then he comes back later and then say, here is this big list, people are working with it, and he says, here is the 3 parameters: non-digestibility, fermentation, selectivity, and based on that, whether what we can call a probiotic, a prebiotic. For example, according to him, there are only like inulin, which I'm going to talk in a minute, oligofructose, galacto-oligosaccharides, lactulose, probably they can be called as prebiotics, but the rest in the world, you cannot call them as prebiotic. But as sad as it is, unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. People call any product a prebiotic. In fact, I have seen mannan oligosaccharide product, forget mannan oligosaccharide, a product which contains 5% mannan oligosaccharide, they call them prebiotic. So depending on who you talk with, like I'm okay with either way, as long as you're able to sell a product calling a prebiotic, you make a buck out of it, I'm fine with it. So I don't have a problem. So it turns out, like if you have a supplement that can stimulate or enrich the growth of beneficial bacteria. So as long as you have some data to show that your product can stimulate lactobacillus and bifidobacteria growth, go and call it a prebiotic. I don't have a problem with that. So you will find some people using the word colonic food so that they can avoid the use of term prebiotics. They are all colonic food. Basically, if you look at the prebiotics, they are oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharide means, oligo means multiple, saccharides means sugar molecules. So basically several sugar molecules. We have inulin, fructooligosaccharides, galacto-oligosaccharides, lactulose, pyrodextrins. In fact, milk oligosaccharides, breast milk contains a lot of oligosaccharide. In fact, the prebiotic research started with babies that were fed breast milk and babies that were not fed breast milk. and their microbial composition were different, and people like, why is that? Babies fed breast milk are having a different microbial composition. That's when they found out these breast milk contains a lot of oligosaccharide, and that's when the concept of prebiotics started. Symbiotics are combination of prebiotics and probiotics. So basically we have inulin or oligofructose. Oligofructose you can synthesize in a lab. Inulin is something you get naturally, or fructo-oligosaccharide. You take a glucose and put it in fructose. More fructose, you can have up to 7 fructose in a glucose oligofructose. Inulin is the same, except that you have up to 40 units of fructose. And the important message is how these fructose get linked. It is linked by a particular linkage called as beta-2-1, and the point was bifidobacteria and lactobacillus, they have this enzyme called as beta-fructosidase, which can break down this particular link. So every time they have this enzyme, they break down this link to get a unit of fructose, and they can use this fructose for their energy need. So which is going to give this beneficial bacteria, the inulin, fructose oligosaccharide, galacto-oligosaccharide, give a beneficial bacteria a competitive advantage so that they can proliferate compared to a Salmonella, which doesn't have this particular enzyme, so they won't be able to use this fructose oligosaccharide. So the question we were interested is, can we apply these symbiotics to control Salmonella shedding in layers? So that was the question we were interested in. So we did a couple of experiments. The first was an in vitro study. We came up with this in vitro study because we wanted to find, because if we go to any company, like they always come up with a list of 20 different products, 20 different strains of probiotics, and say which is the best one. So we wanted to come up with an assay that would rapidly analyze the ability of these probiotic strains against Salmonella. It's a very simple experiment. We used these 4 products because this was the product that the company I was working with, BIOMIN, they had it. So we wanted to look at the ability of these individual strains in decreasing Salmonella proliferation in vitro. So it's a very simple assay. What we do is take out the bacteria, Salmonella, and then we grow them at a particular concentration for 12 hours, and we know that this is the concentration of Salmonella we have in our culture media. And what we do is take our probiotics. Only thing is we need our pure strains of this individual culture. The assay is simple, but getting the pure strain was difficult. BIOMIN wouldn't do it. Raj would not give it to me. He made me to sign a million documents that I would do that. Even then, he wouldn't do it, and finally had to send him a blow-up picture of his dream girl, which is not his wife, Angelina Jolie. Finally, after that, he sends me the pure culture after so many hurdles. He has some soft corner for Angelina Jolie, I don't know why. And what we do is we take our individual colonies and grow them in the strain. You can do the same experiment both in liquid media as well as solid media, but I'm going to show you data only with the liquid media. And we take our probiotic strain, inoculate them in MRS media for 12 hours. At the stage, we spin down the bacteria. We just take the supernatant. The idea is whatever the bacteria produce will be in the supernatant, and we will be evaluating the efficiency of the supernatant in decreasing the Salmonella. So we mix this supernatant at different ratio. The 0:1 is the control group that does not have the supernatant, and we mix it at different ratio, and then we look at the proliferation after 6 hours, I think. All the 4 bacterial strain we studied, at least at a very high supernatant, Enterococcus, lactobacillus and bifidobacteria were very efficient in decreasing the Salmonella proliferation in vitro. And as this is the control group, and as we decrease the amount of supernatant, the efficiency of the supernatant in decreasing the Salmonella proliferation decreased. All the 4 strains we studied were efficient in decreasing Salmonella colonization in vitro. Salmonella proliferation in the in vitro. The second experiment we did was, Amanda did, was with in vivo study to determine the effects of symbiotic supplementation on layer production performance, and also we wanted to determine whether these symbiotic supplementation can decrease Salmonella colonization or at least shedding. Salmonella colonization work is being going on, but the shedding following an experimental Salmonella challenge. So this was our goal of doing that. Simple experimental design up to 14 week. What we did was control group with up to 14 weeks. On day of hatch, we got the birds, layer birds, and we put them in control feed and symbiotic feed with 24 cages and 8 chicks per replication. The symbiotic we used was the BIOMIN product, lactobacillus that had Lactobacillus reuteri, Enterococcus faecium, Bifidobacterium animalis, Pediococcus acidolactylide, and with fructose oligosaccharide as its prebiotic. At 14 weeks, we went to 2x2 factorial with vaccination. We took the control bird, either vaccinated with a killed vaccine, subcutaneously at 2 time points, if I remember properly, 14 and 17 weeks. They were vaccinated or not vaccinated, and then at 24 weeks of age, what we did with the same group, the vaccinated group were challenged with Salmonella or not challenged, but the unvaccinated group was only challenged, kind of a messy experimental design. Because of that, it became a 3x2 factorial design, the 3-year vaccinated, challenged and vaccinated plus challenged at 2 levels of control and symbiotic factorial design. So this was our experimental design. We were feeding birds at 1 gram per kg or 1 kg per metric ton of probiotic up to week 3, and then we reduced to 0.5, and once we had the Salmonella infection, we increased the dose of probiotic back to 1 kg per metric ton. And vaccination was with Poultry. Yes, and then the challenge was with 250 microliter of huge amount of dose, 1 to the 10 to the power of 9 CFE of Salmonella enteritis, week 24. We measure body weight every 2 weeks, and egg production daily once the bird came into production, around at 0.5, -5, 3, 8, 10, 17, 22, and 24 and 30 days post-challenge. We collected samples to measure Salmonella shedding and some of the immune parameters. The body weight up to 20 weeks of age, obviously there's no challenge, Salmonella challenge, because we did the challenge only after 23 weeks of age. So up to 20 weeks of age, the experimental design is a 2x2 factorial design with and without symbiotics, with and without vaccination. The birds that were having feeding, that were having with symbiotic, the body weight was higher. They were slightly gaining more body weight at each time point at 17, 18, and 20 weeks of age. They were having a higher body weight compared to the birds that were not fed symbiotic. There was slightly a vaccine effect, but at some point even the vaccine effect did disappear. When it came to hen egg production, that's where we were really happy. Amanda always comes to me and says that here is the group that is coming into production much earlier. So obviously I think it's because of the body weight. These birds came into production much earlier than the bird that were not fed symbiotic. The difference was like the difference between the day and night. This group, the groups that were fed, here in this group we pulled out the vaccine effect because there was no vaccine effect. So basically it's just 2 groups, the birds that were fed symbiotic and without symbiotic. The birds came into egg production much earlier in the birds that were fed symbiotic. They came earlier, they were still having this effect for a while, up to 23 weeks of age. Post challenge at 23 weeks of age is when we had the Salmonella challenge. Even after Salmonella challenge, one thing, the Salmonella did not have an effect on the egg production. The birds don't even feel that it's having a Salmonella infection. So we'll pull it out of the model. Same with vaccination. There was only a symbiotic effect. Having a symbiotic effect did increase the egg production, day egg production, post Salmonella challenge too. We looked at the acidolactolite content. I always ask different companies, like even yesterday I was asking a couple of people, how do you even know that your probiotics survive in the intestine? As surprising as it is to me, lot of companies do not have that data. I say to people, it's like a jungle out there. In the intestine is a jungle, it's not simple. No matter how much Raj likes Angelina Jolie, if I'm going to leave Raj and Angelina Jolie in the Amazon jungle and expect them to colonize the Amazon jungle after 20 years, if I go after 20 years, good luck with that. Raj is not going to survive the jungle for the night. Kidding. If Angelina is seeing this presentation, choose me. At least I will give my life before getting eaten by the tiger. So I asked the question, how do you know that your products survive the intestine? We are able to, fortunately, we worked on this a lot. So right now, as long as there are specific species-specific primers, I would be able to measure whether your product survive the intestine. We came up with standardized the real-time PCR technique to do that. So we are seeing that. I think we can ignore this. It's kind of complicated. Basically, the group with symbiotic that were fed symbiotic, we are able to measure acidolacti in the post challenge. We are able to see these acidolacti in the birds that were fed symbiotics at both day and day 22. Same with lactobacillus reuteri. We are able to see that the birds that were fed symbiotic and are even, especially when there's a challenge, the amount of one of the lactobacillus reuteri we are feeding is higher in the birds that were fed the symbiotic. So these symbiotics, the probiotic strain which we were feeding, do survive in the intestine, though at a low level. It might look low, but when you're looking at a huge number of bacteria, you're talking about 10 to the power of 14 bacteria, even 0.001% being lactobacillus, the symbiotic, the probiotic strain you are feeding is a big deal. She also measured, Amanda also measured the Salmonella colonization or Salmonella shedding, fecal content, the fecal content. So what she found was the bird that was vaccinated but had no Salmonella, obviously doesn't have any Salmonella load. But the birds that were just challenged, no vaccine, had high amount of Salmonella in the fecal content. The bird that was vaccinated and then challenged with Salmonella, it had lower amount of Salmonella. The birds that got the symbiotic, just the symbiotic, had no Salmonella. And the birds that were having symbiotic vaccine unchallenged. Here was the group that got the symbiotic unchallenged. This group, even without a vaccine, was able to reduce the amount of Salmonella in the fecal content at day 8 post Salmonella challenge. Effect of symbiotic, she also measured the immunoglobulin content in the serum against Salmonella. She found that, I think this is the primary immune response. This is the bird that got the Salmonella for the first time. So right after infection, the body does produce a lot of immunoglobulins against Salmonella. That's the reason this went up. But within this group that got symbiotic vaccine, the birds that got symbiotics had a high amount of, even though it was low, it was numerically higher amount of immunoglobulins, Salmonella immunoglobulins compared to the group that have the vaccine. She measured fecal tonsil tumor necrosis factor alpha. The birds that had symbiotics had a high amount of tumor necrosis factor alpha. It's an inflammatory cytokine that will help you to fight the infection. And Salmonella is an intracellular pathogen, and you need inflammatory cytokines to get rid of the Salmonella. To conclude, supplementation of symbiotic products can be beneficial in improving the layer production performance, and it also can protect you against Salmonella infection. And with this, Revati Shanmugasundaram, my technician, the farm crew, My mentors, Geeta Chirian, she's my master's boss, Kirk Lacey, my PhD guide, Terry Geiger, my postdoc boss. These three people are the people who made me who I am today. So wherever you guys are, thank you. And with this, I'll take any question.